This video is to show you a way to modify your little ball head jigs to give a better sonar return. If you guys like this video, please like, subscribe. And if you're interested in the whole science aspect, just continue to walk through of why it works. If you're not interested in why it works and just how to make the tool to do it, go to this timestamp. And if you just want to go to where I apply it, go to this timestamp and I'll show you how to do it. But first we're gonna get into why it works. The reason what we're gonna do here is we're actually putting in retroreflectors into the head of a ball head jig. It's basically the corner of a box. So at any angle it hits, it returns light back to its source, but at the same time it works for sonar. So instead of having a little area that your ball head jig returns sonar, it's gonna double the area, give you what I've seen about 50% or more on its return. So let's get into the science of how this works. There's two types of shapes that'll work as reflectors. One is a cat's eye and the other is a prism, which is basically the same as a corner of a box. And what it does is at any distance, it hits this within its degree of angle, it returns the source back to it, which would be light. But as everybody knows with live scoping, they call it spotlighting. It has the same principle in sonar and everything else. Basically what we're trying to do is when the sonar comes and hits this, instead of reflecting off the side of the ball head jig, it's gonna go into the reflector and come back. And all this is just a stamped piece of part into the lead. It doesn't have to be shiny to return sonar signal, it just has to be hard. This will work on a whole bunch of different baits. So I have two ways of applying it. One is actually a retroreflector tape, which I apply to hard baits, and the other one is stamping it. You can stamp this shape if you heat it gently and go into the bill of like a jerk bait or a crankbait or anything like that. As long as you're gentle, don't punch through it, and just get these in, you're gonna get a better return. Once again, it doesn't have to be reflective. And the reflective tape, when you put it on, people see it as shiny. It's not actually gonna be shiny. What it's gonna end up doing is returning light from its source. So here's some graphics of how it works right here. As you can see in these graphics of how it hits, it comes back and returns to its source. So this is what you would call a prism reflector. And this prism reflector works for light, but we're using sonar and it works for sonar. So you'll see it come in. It's basically the corner of a box. If you look at it, it's the corner of a box. And this will show you how it works. As long as you hit it within a certain angle, it greatly increases your sonar return. Here's a little short clip on how it works. The water clarity wasn't good this day, but you'll see the bottom one returns first, and this is just a 1/8 ounce ball head jig, no bait on the back of it, and I'm getting a better return off the bottom one further. Now, if you have a bigger jig, bigger area, greater the return. But if you'll notice that the bottom one right here is giving a greater return than the top one. And all I did was tie two ball head jigs up together right along each other. So you'll see that the bottom one has been modified, the top one isn't. And we'll get into a little bit more of the science right here. So this is a piece of retroreflective tape right here. So you can see it's really bright when I'm directly behind it. But if I'm gonna move the light source off to the right, now I don't get as much return. It's still the same brightness, it's just not coming back to where it is. It's coming back to where the light is pointed. So if I move back through the camera, ooh, focus up. It doesn't like this darkness. So to see it out, I'm gonna move it back in front of the camera. There we go. Right behind the camera is where the light source is. So I have a really strong return. And if I go off to the side of it, it dies off. Still illuminated by the same amount of light. It's just not reflecting. And I know what you're thinking. It's directly situated behind the reflector tape. But it'll work all the way to a 45-degree angle. Focus. And if we move, it's going to continue. So we're going off to the side of it now. And we still have the same reflection return till we get to about a 45-degree angle. Because that is what the angles are going to mean when we come to make it. The tool to do it. So you see we're out past the 45. It's not shining bright, but if I move back in to the point, focus, you can see it starts shining bright again. So we can move the camera back over here. So you can see whichever way you move, as long as you're within a 45-degree angle, it gets a strong return. But if I move the light off, you don't get that return. It's still illuminated by the same light. Coming back behind the camera, brightness increases. And all this retroreflector tape is a bunch of mini prisms in it. And this is what you can add to your jerkbaits. It's not going to add flash necessarily to a jerkbait. Put a little bit on the bill and it really helps out with the return, especially when the jerkbait is facing right at you. Once again, to the right, lose reflection. We come back in. It's going to hold this reflection until we get to the 45-degree angle, and then the angle's too steep for reflection. See, it went dull. Let's move back into the 45, and she's bright again. All right, we're going to go into how to make the tool. So in this portion, angles are critical. I'm going to use a nail, okay? And you're going to need probably an angle finder. What we're going to do here, this one's easy because I have a plate on it. This is going to be 45 right there. That will be 45. But if you're wondering about what angle you need, you can use square. You can see my angle right here, 45 lines directly up to it. So I know if I stay at this corner right here, I'm going to get a good 45-degree angle. So we're going to go into a 45. I'm going to stick it in and make one flat side. So now you can see I have one flat side in, and we need to make 3. The easiest way to do that, you're gonna go out by 120 degrees. The easiest way to do that is do it in thirds. The way you find your third for your 120 is you're gonna put this angle, this leading edge, directly out. When that leading edge is directly out, you're at 120. And then when we flip it and do this side with this leading edge out, be at 120, and we'll have our little stamp tool made. Now I got it made up, and it's just the corner of a box. Kind of shiny. I'm going to clean it up on the belt sander real quick and we'll get a good look. Now I got it cleaned up. It's basically, I don't know how well you can see that, but it's 3-sided. 1 side, 2 side, 3 sides. So this is what we're going to use to stamp a ball head jig. So I like stamping mine in a vise. I like putting mine into a vise and I'll stamp around the head. You can do it just holding with one hand Do that, and you can just take it, pin it with a hammer on top, add in your pattern. It's not clamped in, I'm not hurting it, it's in the open hole. Line everything up. And the nice thing about a prism reflector, it doesn't matter the depth you put it in. You can put them in, as long as your angles are right, you can put them in as long as you get them stamped in. You can do a bunch of little micro ones and it'll still give a good return. And that's why I use this one over trying to do a cat's eye. That has a lot more geometry involved with it. But we're going to just take this, just give it little bumps. Lead's soft, so little peen, you don't want to hit it too hard. Just little bits like that. And I personally like doing the side just in case the jig head's coming down sideways. Still gives a good return. Just find any little gap you got. You can put big ones, you can put little ones. The more reflectors you have, the better your return is. You just don't want to overlap them. You want to avoid overlapping them as much as possible. If you got a little space in between them, you can give it a very light ding to put it in there. But don't overlap them because you're going to change the geometry of it. It'll still help, but it won't be as effective. So that's all it is right there, is just a bunch of little prisms. It's just, we just hammered in those little corners of the boxes. Right there. Didn't damage the hook, didn't do anything. I'm just adding those little reflectors. So this will give a better return on your live scope. It helps quite a bit actually, is from what I've found, especially on distance. Distance is where this really helps. If you're doing short casts, you know, within 20 foot, I don't really see that much of a difference. It comes back a bit brighter, but that's about it. It does come back larger, but longer casts, if you're doing it, this is the deal. I hope this helps you guys out and gives you some better returns on your forward-facing sonar. It really has helped me out on longer casts, being able to spot my bait. You get into dirty water, stuff like that. It does give back a stronger return. Science, right? I'm pretty sure, you know, not too distant future, you know, other people are gonna figure it out and, you know, start seeing ball head jigs probably made with that geometry shape on it to give a stronger return back. And you'll probably see crankbaits and stuff like that, you know, or even jerk baits with that type of patterning into the skin of it to give a better return back. Remember, it doesn't need to be reflective, it just needs to be the correct shape, and once your sonar hits it, it's gonna return brighter. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Please like, comment, subscribe.